Hello, this is Cody with Liquid Laboratory Studios. Today we're going to be repairing the brand new DJI Mavic Pro drone. Mine in particular decided to go run off into a building doing an update, and it broke the actual flat ribbon cable that controls the camera and does all the mechanical adjustments. So we're going to be replacing that. It broke the shock plate in here, so I made my own and I'm going to keep that one in there. So we're going to go through a video and explain how to fix it. And worst case scenario, you get to see how to take these apart and what's inside them. Okay. First thing we're going to do, we're going to inventory our tools. We're going to need a jeweler size set. Particularly, it takes a hex head to take off these screws. It's a 1.5 millimeter. The next one we'll need is like a Phillips, like a P001 roughly. Different regular heads for prying. Magnet. A second set of jeweler size tips. Loctite 242 for attaching the screws back to the base of the gimbal. Probably need a Tatalic one now just to hold the ribbon in place. And our part that came in today, the new ribbon cable, flat ribbon cable. They just came out and mine came in the mail. So let's take a and here it is, the little mystery part that holds everything together. Alright, let's get started. I'm going to start with the 1.5 millimeter hex head. And here's the gimbal ribbon cable we're going to be replacing. First thing you want to do, you want to turn it on its back. Take off these two screws right here. And these guys pry up. You'll find two more of the hex heads. Put on its back. Then we're going to be removing these 8 screws. Or 6 screws. We already got the other 2. Now for this part, there's a little pin connector in here. Needs to be popped off. There we go. Now you kind of work your way around, softly prying it. is screw number 7, screw number 8. Work that way around. So we're going to drop the actual board down. Change our head out to the Phillips. Now, before we touch any electronics, we actually need to ground ourselves out to a part of the frame. So we can do that. Kind of softly, you could pull these cables up. Just a little. Be very careful with them. When you seat them, you have to make sure they seat down flat. Let's disconnect this one. Remove. Now these connections are removed. This is pulled back. Also have this to take off. It's the forward obstacle avoidance sensors here. Drop this board first. This out of the way. we have the complete assembly. For people that have had this hook broken here, you'll probably have to replace this. So you get to this stage and you'll take these last few screws out and just replace the assembly. If you have the actual broken gimbal flat ribbon cable, like we'll be replacing, and also the shock plate, some people may have to replace because it's made out of very cheap metal. So let's get started on this. Actually, I'm going to leave it attached. Comes right off at the fingernail. Now there's these little rubber bands you'll have to pry away. And the final point to remove, take these, the actual control board off here. This will get us to that actual hook that holds it into place. And a bigger screwdriver. Now what I'm going to do, after I remove this board here, make sure you ground yourself before you touch any of these electronic components. I'm going to put actually a shield over this so it doesn't mess with the camera lens at all. Started on removal here. These are the two screws that hold in the anti-shock plate. Be a little more difficult to remove. Now, get to disassembling. Try to be very careful with these wires. So basically, we'll follow everywhere this component goes, and you start removing it. So for this next part, we actually have to reduce to this very, very small Phillips that you'll find in a jeweler set. Now make sure you secure this when you unscrew it. It actually has Loctite on here. We'll have to put it back when we reassemble. Plate off. Now we'll just follow it down. Move these out of the way. And the next part. Third and final screw down here. And actually, I think we found where the damage is. Be very careful not to damage these wires. Part, same thing. 2 more screws. Now this should give us a little bit of room. Very careful not to hit that wire right there. Separate the ribbon cable. I'm not sure if the new one has adhesive, but we'll be able to add some. And here's the rest of the cable. I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of this liquid now. Now that we have all the liquid nail off, we're going to reinstall the new flat ribbon cable. Comes in a static proof bag. Slide that out here. Make sure to always be grounding yourself so you don't build up any kind of a static charge. Alright, so the way this works is this will be the first, second, and third one, and then here will be the final one. You can see that all the connectors are on the end. It has these little adhesive spots on it, so we got to get them just right. And you could always use this as a guide, so this one folds over in particular, right on that mark. Softly bend it. Just to kind of get the parts moving in the right direction, we're going to just kind of follow the pattern of the original one. So it bends back a little bit. Start putting it in. Now it's going to wrap forward and back. Take a base point. one in particular. Now with a little bit of luck, I'm getting it just right, clicked into place, so we'll move on to the next one. Now that we have it lined up, softly work it into place. So we have the very end one on, and as you can see it bends around so that it will give it some room. Now push down where the adhesive was, get a good seal. Let's move on to the next. Right, now our second one's hooked up. Now following the previous pattern, we'll attach the last bracket. It folds in and around, creates a loop. Go ahead and set this thing up with our liquid nail here. I'm going to put a couple drops on here to make sure that it keep them vibrating out. Just very little. Where it was before on each end of the bracket. Liquid nail here. placing the video wires back in. Very little using a magnet to get these into the holes. Over to plate 2. This one has 3 points of connection. I need to set this into place first. So in order to hook this up, we push it in here first. We seat it. And we go after the single screw. So we got this part into place properly. Screw 1 started. Move on to the second half. Put screw 2 and 3 in. Okay, I have all 3 screws started. Yeah, this screw, and that one. So we're going to tighten them down in sequence a little bit at a time to allow it to lay flat. So on to the last plate. Now for this one, you also want to make sure the wires go down. Every time you add a plate, it's the ribbon and the camera wires all in one. The camera wires go to the outside, and the gimbal ribbon cable goes on the inside. Okay, so now we have the camera wires on the outside, ribbon cable laying flat on the inside. Okay, so now we're down to the last part. Okay, so with the shock plate, you'll actually put it in a different direction you think you will. First of all, I'm going to lay the camera flat, and you're going to go ahead and line it up. This part that sticks out here with the curvature is actually going to go towards the base, like this. So it'll allow this gimbal to move freely. So positioning in that direction. And this final part actually folds in on itself again and will same thing, these will need the Loctite. A little bit more on these ones. Now that we have the rubber bands in and have replaced that little hook, the 2 screws on top, everything moves freely like it's supposed to. So let's go ahead and start reassembling. Before you hook on the main frame, you want to attach the ribbon cable before you start hooking it on. First thing we want to do is mount this plate, the circuit board on. Careful not to touch any parts of any circuitry. There we go. We have the 3 screws attached. Do not over tighten. Now we're ready to mount. Put the forward obstacle sensors back into place. Before we do, I'm going to set these ribbon cables. your way through the screws, softly tightening. Go ahead and reattach. What appears to be the power. Reattach this wire. Kind of curves around. Now this screw is another one of the final flat ones. And finally, these last ribbon cables. You just don't want to force these. Just walk them onto place. Make sure it's set right. Oops. Now we have it reassembled. Go ahead and take this protective tape off. That's the full range of motion. That works. That works. And that works. Let's go ahead and start reassembling. The final test. Make sure all these are in place. Good. These actually hook back into place. Where we set it in, we're going to rehook up this wire here. start with the 2 front screws. Go back to our 1.5 millimeter hex head. And the 2 front screws we're going to be working on are these 2. Just want to start them. Remember, you want them snug, but really not that tight. The plastic or composite this is made out of will crumble. On to the next 6. It's all the way flat, just a little bit snug. And you don't want these tight. You just don't want them loose. So move on to the next portion. Final 2. hooks. Forward. Back. Hook on forward. Okay. Final 2 screws. And there we have it, the complete repaired Mavic DJI Pro. We're going to go ahead and do some tests on it. First thing we're going to do, we're going to turn it on. It looks like it went through its test properly. So I'm going to link everything up. And as you can see, we have control of the gimbal in every direction. And we're not getting any error codes. So it appears to be fixed. I'll just do a quick flight test and we're good to go. And isn't that amazing? We fixed the DJI Mavic Pro. So if you're having issues where it says gimbal pin might be in place or obstructed or gimbal motor overload, it's most likely that ribbon cable that controls it is the problem. So there's how you fix it, and do a quick test flight and away we'll go.